Good afternoon and welcome to another Kerfuffle showcase. I'm delighted to have Max here from Mutual today. Max Fuller, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, Simon. Very good, thanks. I've read a little bit about you on your bad hair day or whatever it is on.
Now that is outrageous.
What's been going on?
We've been backstage for the last 10 minutes and you've just dumped that on me. That really is. You're all paranoid now. Is that a very clever tactic to put me on the back foot?
It is indeed, yes.
Well, all I'll say is Strawhead was the one that really caught my attention there, but don't worry. Like Richard Nixon, I carry a long and extensive hate list, and I'll be getting to them in turn. Max, today we're here to talk about the UK's first pre-portal. Now, that sounds fairly exciting there. So talk to us. What is a pre-portal?
Well, as it says on the tin, it's essentially a registered buyer platform, a mutual registered buyer platform where agencies can put invite their registered buyers onto our platform, and then those registered buyers can see their market appraisal properties ahead of them being instructed.
Okay. And give us a bit of background about how you came to this.
Well, it's been a 5-year journey, to be honest. A eureka moment 5 years ago. My sort of background is banking and financial services, and then I moved into becoming a buy-to-let landlord and property developer over the time, and the mortgage broker, etc. So I've always had leanings towards property in one way or another, and came up with an initial idea that got a little bit of traction, but it was more towards building society and a mortgage idea, and then it morphed, and then it pivoted, and then it changed, and over a 5-year period I ended up with what we've now got. So it was as simple as that, as they say. 5 years just appeared just like that. It's incredible. I think and Andrew Stanton mentioned in one of his interviews with Chris Watkin, that a lot of prop tech, it takes them 4, 5, 8 years in development. What takes them so long? But the reality is, you don't know what you don't know when you start out, and it's a long journey of finding out what works, what doesn't work, and all of those sort of things. So as it goes along, you then realize each challenge along the way, just as you meet it and you overcome it, the whole thing gets better and better and better, and that's how you get to a point where then you're ready, for launch.
It's always a bit unfair, isn't it? Minimum viable product sounds so unsatisfactory, and actually, just the work that's required to get something shipshape, in such a demanding marketplace these days, where there's very few. There's little forgiveness, isn't there, if you don't crack it first time there. It does take a huge amount of work, doesn't it, for the highly evolved market these days, the discerning client.
Yeah, and what you don't necessarily appreciate is the number of different avenues that you have to look at, whether that's marketing, compliance, web development, etc. There's a whole spectrum of areas which you have to meet challenges in as you go along the route. So
I get that.
It takes the time.
And talk us through the name Mutual. What was the thinking behind that? I mean, is it a Ron Seal Simon? That's a bit obvious, or is there a deeper meaning?
Yeah, it was purely the fact that the whole concept is about reciprocity, mutual benefits each to each and every stakeholder. So agents get to benefit through having an increased conversion rate and receiving your increased market appraisal leads, the buyers receive the benefit of being able to have a level playing field of opportunity, control of their experience, and the ability to see more properties sooner. And sellers get the opportunity to effectively have a look at what the buyer interest is ahead of actually either engaging with an estate agent in the first place, because we know that the journey for a seller can be quite a long process in deciding to sell. So they've got the opportunity to engage with the buyer interest ahead of getting a market appraisal from estate agents, and then instruction at a later stage. So each stakeholder gets different things out of it, but also give different things as well. So the agents, by inviting their buyers onto the platform and adding their market appraisal properties, buyers through recording their interest against those properties, and the buyers, around 60% of the buyers are next time buyers. Yeah. So what we're aiming to do is pull those into the journey and allow them to add their own properties ahead of engaging with an estate agent. They get to see their buyer interest, and then they pull through into a market appraisal for the member agencies. Okay. So everybody benefits.
I was going to say, can we work through each? Sure. What do people do for the agents?
Sorry, I missed that last bit.
I said let's work through it each in turn. Can we just talk about specifically what does Mutual do for them, the agents themselves?
Okay, so it allows the agent to offer at market appraisal stage for their own market appraisal opportunities. It allows them the opportunity to offer the prospective clients pre-marketing of their property to a database of clients. It allows for the opportunity for those prospective clients to see the buyer interest for themselves through their own dashboard, and potentially, if they instruct that agent, the opportunity to maybe engage an off-market sale. So discrete marketing and possibly a discrete sale to boot. So you've got three elements for the agent there that they can offer against what their competition can do.
Some of the most successful agents I've seen around the country have really nailed that discrete marketing element. Do you think that is a huge part of what you're trying to do? Do you think that deserves a wider exposure in the marketplace?
Absolutely. I mean, the element of off-market sale has been the domain of either the very rich or celebrities, generally speaking. This sort of democratizes that opportunity, and in a sort of a data-rich world, a lot of people actually want to retreat away from that to an extent. And there's all sorts of personal reasons why people don't necessarily want to advertise the fact that they're selling the property, from a point of view of potential splits, in partnerships and divorces and, probate and even just, keeping it away from nosy neighbours and all of that sort of thing. So there's a whole host of reasons why you may want to do that. Plus, of course, the other advantage of doing that is that you get a second opportunity to launch your property if it hasn't sold in an off-market situation, to then launch it in the open market on the main search portals and have a second bite of the cherry in that regard. So
without it having obviously harmed it by going on first time and all the rest of it. Okay, that makes sense. And for the buyers, what's the benefit for buyers?
Well, the buyers, in my days as a property investor, etc., and I used to sit on a lot of agency databases, and invariably, it's not a great service in many ways for the buyers. You might get a flurry of activity initially, then it gets sporadic after a month, couple of months. By month 3 or 4, you're the forgotten man. And I've had it happen to me a number of times where you've been on a database, you've been walking down a street or whatever, and suddenly you see a property with a for sale or a sale board outside with sold subject to contract, and that property would have been an ideal one that you should have been invited to have seen, and you haven't been. Yeah. And general public's perception of that is that the agent has had a tickle in his back pocket, but that isn't the case generally. It's a case that either the CRM system or threw up first 5 or 6 or 7 names and the agent got a bite early doors or something. Yeah. But it's the customer perception that really sort of lingers in that whole essence. So the mutual platform provides a level playing field for all buyers. They're in control of their own process, and it actually takes a little bit of pressure away from the estate agents, rather than being responsible for phoning up a customer with a particular property. If those customers are in control of their own search and their own alerts, and they've notified their own interest on those particular properties, it actually becomes a less certainly a less involved system for the agent, so they can have a little bit more quality and a little less sort of running around on the hamster wheel.
And probably the most overused phrase in agency, isn't it, when you're talking about between agents, at least, talking about all the tire kickers that are out there. In terms of it, that's a very real perception and indeed reality, isn't it, that there are actually lots and lots of leads, but actually how you deal with the massive leads and get to the quality ones is a critical factor for most businesses.
Absolutely.
So other than obviously I can see confidentiality being a really key element there, are there other benefits for the sellers as well, for the vendor?
Well, the vendor obviously gets the opportunity to see the buyer interest ahead of engaging with estate agents, or even once they've engaged with the agent, but they haven't actually formally instructed the agent at that point. So the prospective vendor is getting a bit of pre-marketing. They're a little bit ahead of the game than they otherwise would be. They can see the buyer interest for themselves, and they can make their own decision as to when they come on board. And essentially, the buyer interest is the prompter to actually get vendors on board sooner rather than later. If you know that you've got 5 buyers all lined up, ready and waiting to go, you probably get your house in order a little bit quicker and get moving on it and instruct the agent. So it's all about moving everything along for the agent in many ways, but it's to the benefit of the seller and the buyer at the same time.
And you had a fantastic launch this week on social as well, didn't you? And on the main websites there. And as ever, people were charging in as usual, as they always do with disruptive charges. There was a couple of main challenges, weren't there, that I wanted to raise your attention there. The first one was one that a couple of people mentioned was, well, what about that whole point about obviously, getting it out there before we've done the deal, before we've actually signed them up? How do you answer that sort of concern?
Yeah, it's a little bit of a misunderstanding of the site itself in many ways. The buyers are anonymous, the sellers are anonymous, the agents are anonymous, and the properties are anonymous. So we don't show the properties with any agency banners around them or anything of that nature.
Yeah.
So the properties are shown with only a partial address, and if it's a customer added property, they have 3 internal photographs added to the site. Now we have a moderation step before they get published. We don't want, naked bodies. We don't want. Well, I'll be okay on the admin dashboard, but I'll be doing double shift on that. We don't want customers on there with the placard with the mobile phone number saying please buy me or anything of that nature. And we don't. And what we don't want is we don't want external photos either. So it's 3 internal photos, partial property address, so the town and the first part of the postcode, and that gives the buyer sufficient information to know it's in the general area that they're looking for. It's on, with the price bracket and the details, etc. So it's all about marketing for interest, not about marketing for sale at that point. So that's a pre-market situation, and there's no agency banner around it or anything. If an agent has added the property, though, it does have an agent verified tick on it to say this property has been market appraised. So so it's identifying between a customer added propered and an agency added property. And agencies, by the way, agencies also get added elements to the listing as well. So they can put in a district identifier onto the property address. They get to put on a little bit of property description, not a great deal, but a bit.
Yeah.
And they also have the opportunity essentially to add 6 internal photos rather than 3. So it's all about enhancing the customer listing. So the whole point of the process, if you like, if a customer has added their property onto the site, when they've got buyer interest, it pushes them towards getting a market appraisal from the agents anyway, because their listing can be enhanced by the agent going out and doing a market appraisal.
Got you. So essentially, if I understand this right, why that obviously shoots down a couple of those, just those commonly repeated ones there. And you did ask all those people to get in contact with you to explain it. So hopefully this does explain it a bit more. To my mind, it sounds very similar to lastminute.com when they used to have their secret hotels approach there, didn't they? They had they gave you broad information, enough information that you knew whether you were interested or not here, but not enough that you could obviously, in this instance, reach out to the hotel and obviously, go to them direct. Or, as some of the people concerned about, hang on, is this essentially a prospecting portal? We're going to just go on that and look at who we're going to try and tap up afterwards. It's really you can't do that. The approach that you've gone down, can you? With those, makes sense. So I think that's really important to clear up, isn't it? Because otherwise, people will get off on the wrong foot, and I'm sure you'll be happy to talk that through and indeed demonstrate that, obviously, when people want to have a look. So thank you, Max, for clearing that up. And so, apart from the lazy answer, which is, of course, is you want the whole of market, what sort of agents are you looking to get on board at this stage with yourself? Are you looking for a particular type of agent, demographic, or all comers welcome?
All comers welcome. What we're aiming to do, obviously, is launch in the localities where we've got more interest than elsewhere. And obviously there's 2 reasons for that. One is because you want a successful launch within a particular area. We don't want to stretch ourselves too thin in terms of what we're doing. But essentially, where we get the nubs of interest, of local interest from agents, that's where we will start off, and then we will obviously aim to get more agencies on board in the areas where we haven't got enough interest in the first instance, and then grow those to a point where we've got enough to launch, and it makes it viable for the. It hasn't got to be just viable for the agents. It's got to be viable for the buyers and the sellers too. You know, that's one of the points of all of this, is that it's got to be a better place for everybody concerned, not just one party. And I think agents in the past have been a little bit guilty about just thinking that things are about themselves in some respects, without necessarily being too concerned about the other sides of the equation. And I think the registered buyer database is a case in point in that regard. 60% of your database is likely to turn into sellers in the reasonably near future. But agents are only really looking at those databases in many ways in terms of helping them buy a property that agency is selling, rather than looking at what is the buyer journey, what does the buyer want out of this process, you know, and what does the seller want out of the process. And for me, it is about making sure that each of those stakeholders has the right benefits out of the process.
Okay, and a critical part, as you said, is with a functioning market, an effective market, it's got to meet both sides. So a critical part of that, of course, is then the consumer in all this. So how are you going to catch their eyeballs, obviously, Max, in such a it's such a contested marketplace out there? I'm assuming, unless you're going to tell me now you haven't got 100 million to throw at this, to do the we're going to catch right move and all the rest of it. What's going to be your approach to kind of getting this viral amongst the consumer?
Right. Well, first off, we've got an automatic responder for portal leads for the agents. So up to 50% of portal leads go unanswered, etc., according to statistics. I'm not sure how true that is. But in doing the automatic responder, it goes out with the agent's logo on. It's an invitation from the agent that effectively says, "Thanks very much for your inquiry. Ahead of us getting back to you, why not have a look at some of our pre- and off-market properties? Click here."
Yeah. And
by doing that, the customer comes through onto our platform. They make a search. The search is automatically saved with an automatic alert. So once they're captured, they're captured.
Yeah.
And that customer is recorded against the agent whose portal lead led to that customer coming on board. So that's one of the ways that we're looking to obviously be able to grow the eyeballs in the first place. The second is from the agencies themselves, in terms of inviting their registered buyers to the database, to our platform. It's up to the customer whether or not they come on board. The whole point is it's an additional opportunity for the agents to showcase their properties, not taking away from their existing buyer database process completely. They can still utilize that as they would. Thirdly, we then sort of go be doing social media, PPC, and what we'll be doing is targeting the competitor agents that aren't on Mutual.
Okay.
Because we've got a different message to put out there. It's not like an agent using PPC against another agent. XYZ in so-and-so town, PPC against anybody who's looking at that. Our messaging is much more nuanced towards the buyer or the seller. So from a buyer perspective, do you want to see properties ahead of them coming to market? That's the sort of line. For sellers, it's, do you want to see buyer interest before you've engaged an agent?
So targeted against the system per se of marketing and launching the property. Yeah, that's quite clever actually. That's quite you'll raise some eyebrows doing that, I'm sure.
Yeah,
anyway,
absolutely. And on the social media side as well, we can partner with the agents that come on board with Mutual in a Facebook advertising campaign, utilizing the agents' database with a lookalike system. They do it, but utilize our PR advertising scenarios of, would you like to see the buyer interest ahead of engaging an agent? Would you like to see properties ahead of them coming to market? So that will attract customers in a way that agents can't by advertising their own brand or whatever, because it's no surprise that to estate agents that the customers don't necessarily like estate agents. They're up there in that list of most hated professions.
Yeah, I think it's down there.
Yeah, sorry, down there. Yes, which is a shame, really, because I know that so many estate agents they do and they want to do a cracking job.
Yeah,
and I've met a lot. They're absolutely fantastic people. They do a great service for their clients, but the customer perception isn't there because the system and its transparency in the past hasn't really allowed that to show through. And so I think what we're doing will allow a little bit more of that to come through.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, thank God estate agents are there, because PropTech's a little bit below them, so we have to take it on the chin on that front.
I'm feeling it.
And Max, how do agents start using yourselves? How do they get on board? Is it? I assume it's quite an easy onboarding process, isn't it? What's the process?
I mean, it's pretty much designed to to come on board and start using. But what we're aiming to do initially, from inquiries, whether we will do Zoom invitations for a demonstration meeting. First off, and secondly, we can do an onboarding meeting after that. The process is very, very simple. Registration onto the site takes less than a minute. Adding the company profile, whether is around about 5 to 10 minutes maximum. Adding extra branches is somewhere between 2 and 5 minutes, and then you're ready to utilize the.
You can get moving as quickly as that with it, yeah.
Absolutely, and where we'd aim for agents to initially start is actually adding a few of the on-market properties that they've got at the present moment, because it just gives them the opportunity to run through the system, but also they can test the reaction with their own customers that are already on board. And one of the reasons for that, and people might say, oh, well, why would you do that? If you've had a vendor on board for a couple of months or whatever, it's a great way of showing them, actually, you're doing something else and something different. And you're being proactive in being able to show something different. And that will, if they were thinking of potentially leaving you, that will hold them there for a little bit longer. And time is your friend in some respects in terms of getting a sale, isn't it? You know, so from that point of view, doing that anyway, and it just gets you used to the system. But then you can revisit all of those missed market appraisal opportunities over the last 3 to 6 months. You've got a great story.
Test the water. Look, you know, you might not have been ready for the market. We've got a really low key way of actually of seeing where you might have seen what the local market's doing. Try this without, you know, fully going the whole hog. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know, you've got a great chance to do that.
Well, Eb certainly agrees with you. Genius marketing strategy. So I think it's very interesting. I think that anything that can tap into that, you know, that almost that scarcity angle. That first of all, you know, with things like open houses, that was tapping into what the Aussies always told us. Well, first of all, obviously it's far more efficient, but then secondly, that concept of walking around a home with other people potentially, you know, seeing so many people there. Oh God, there's other bidders against us. That's very, very clever. Being able to build up that excitement and everything else, and gauge the interest. I can certainly see the angles there. I'm going to be fascinated to see how it works out, because I certainly know you know, some of the most successful sales strategies do revolve that. So if you can essentially weaponize that you know, that human emotion around scarcity and exclusivity, it could be very, very interesting there. Okay, and are there any other advantages that Mutual provide as well?
Yeah, in terms for how the agent can actually use the site, for instance, with the off-market scenario as well, you can have a dual pricing strategy. So you could work this either two ways. One is that you up your normal fees across the board, and you discount to customers that sell in the off-market stage, or you could do it the opposite way around and you premium the off-market approach. And so either way around, you've got an opportunity there to dual price or dual fee your strategy. For those agents who are met with a prospective client who insists on their valuation rather than your own valuation, then this is a great opportunity to turn around and test that price point without actually having spent marketing costs and time
and letting the cat out the bag and having that whole first impression thing go out, and then you realize you've just got it slightly wrong, and you know, straight away you see a price reduction, which of course taints the listing for all time, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So and it takes away a little bit of buyer ego as well, because if you've launched a property onto the market at the customer's valuation, and then you have to drop it at some future point, that element of dropping it, a lot of customers will take a view that, one, they don't want to reward the agent that's had to drop the property price in the first instance, and secondly, they need someone to blame for their own egos in some respects, you know. So what better than the agent who's taken it on board? So to their family and friends or whatever, you know, they'll move to a different agency on the basis that they can. They
had nothing to do with that decision, did they? Where the previous price wasn't me. That agent made me do it. We're with you now. Yes, we're going to listen to you. Okay, I understand that.
Whereas if you're in this area, you know, you've had that private conversation with the client. You can dip the price point down. We're not recording the fact that the price points come down or anything. So it's not a case of the buyers get to see, you know, that's necessarily happened. So it's not recording it like Rightmove or anything of that nature.
Okay, and again, can see the angle there. You know, nice to be able to nurture a confidential register as well, isn't it? Get all your investors in there, treating them to the early launch stuff can again be a very tangible benefit, can't you, for an agent to play on?
Absolutely. And one of the struggles that agents have in some respects with continuing a registered buyer database is the fact that they're not necessarily taking on large numbers of properties in the first instance. Whereas if their registered buyer is invited into this space, the registered buyer is seeing everything that's coming onto the market from any of the mutual agencies that are registered to the platform. So, it makes it a better experience for the registered buyer in the first place. If the registered buyer has a better experience through you as the agent, then they're more likely to have a look at selling through you in the next instance when they, take that step forwards.
And just before the show, you were talking there about the public image of estate agents. You thought that this might impact on the way that estate agents are seen, is it, in terms of their? Just talk us through that again. What's your thought there?
Yeah, well, in one of the aspects, we've essentially got a journey for the customer. Dip your toe in the water, test the market first.
Yeah.
Then move the property into an off-market situation, deal with your registered buyers interest that's already there.
Yeah.
If you haven't got a sale at that point, then you can move the property into the open market at a point which is relative to that customer. And there are a number of occasions where you've got a young family, for instance. They're happy to sell the property, but they haven't found anywhere to buy yet. An agent can end up selling that property 2 or 3 times because the vendors haven't got anywhere to move to, and each time that sale falls through. Whereas if they haven't got anywhere to move to yet, why stick them into the open market immediately? Hold them in the off market. It's still pulling in the registered buyer interest from new registered buyers coming into the whole process, and that makes it just a better scenario. It makes it a more of a defined journey for the customer, rather than this scenario of, we'll list it day one and it'll be on Rightmove, day one plus 1 hour, sort of. So and from a point of view of the transparency element, it's that level playing field of buyer opportunity that's available, and the agent, and this part we haven't touched on, but when the market appraisal opportunity comes across to the agent dashboard, it comes across with the buyer information as well, not their contact information, not their full contact name, but it comes across with their circumstance and financial situation. So they, in their profile bit, they add a little bit of information in the questions that they answer. Plus, in our search profile, we have 10 features that the buyer can choose to aid their property search, and that goes through with the market appraisal details of the customer property. So the agent gets to see whether or not the customer is a first-time buyer or a next-time mover, whether they're mortgage ready or a cash buyer, and it gets to see on their 10 feature priority list how well the target property matched with the customer's search. So now they can go out armed with a lot of background information that the customer hasn't got. So the customer might see 4 likes and 2 super likes, but the agent can tell them a little bit more about what's behind those likes and super likes. So that becomes a little bit more of a trusted advisor approach rather than just a salesy approach. And especially when you've done a market appraisal, the awkward bit is that contact after the market appraisal, how quickly do you go for the "Are you ready to instruct us, Mr. Client" scenario? And if they haven't bitten at the first phone call, it becomes a more awkward phone call. Whereas with our system, we're providing that extra information for the agents. So the agents can be calling up and saying, we've noticed you've had 3 extra super likes and two extra likes. Yeah. Let us tell you a little bit more about them. And then that naturally comes into a conversation about, are you ready to instruct yet?
Understand. And obviously you're at that really exciting point, Max, where you've just obviously launched. Global domination is just ahead of you on there. What looks like, where would you be happy in 12 months' time? What would be a good result for you in terms of what you've done within the industry?
Personally speaking, so we've got a target over the next 6 months of 800 agencies, to be on board at least, hopefully. These are going to be tough times for the agents over the next 6 months or so. Yeah, and this is the ideal product to bring back those hesitant sellers, where they're not essentially fully committed. A lot of customers don't want to see a for sale board sat outside their property for 6 months or 3 months or whatever. And so this is an ideal way of everybody, actually, whether it be buyers or sellers, testing out, dipping their toe in the water. Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
No, it's really interesting to understand the whole concept behind it. But obviously, you're a commercial organisation. So, what does the model look like for you? What's the financial model for estate agents? If you spoke about how they actually onboard, but what do they end up paying basically to obviously use Mutual?
Sure. Okay. Well, in the first instance, we've got, I think, a cracking deal in the sense of 6 months free trial.
That's fairly kind.
Yeah, it is. I think so. We want to prove ourselves, our own worth, before we're charging agents. But essentially, it's for agents to utilise and understand their own value out of it. Converting their own appraisal leads.
Yeah,
with that added interest, etc. From a point of view of the costs, the essential membership is £100 per month per office.
Yep.
That's plus VAT, by the way. We have a core membership plan which has a couple of additional features, which is a dual branding of the consumer-facing pages, so it'd be powered by XYZ agency. Yep. When the customers are funneled towards a market appraisal opportunity, the agent who has brought that customer onto the site is the agent that's at the top of the list of the available agencies. The other agencies are in a proximity capacity, and we've got the marketing beacons which sort of allow them to get higher up in that list. And so that's 175 a month, and the premium membership model is 395 a month, and that essentially means that the customers that you bring on board to Mutual, they only get the opportunity to ask for a market appraisal through your agency. So it's a little bit of a exclusive element in that regard.
Sorry, talk me through that element again. So they obviously, if they come on board with you, you've got this exclusivity. They then have to go through to
when they If they then go for a market appraisal, the only option they have is your agency as the. So we're covering, each flavour of agency in some respects. So some are very particular in wanting that. So.
Perfect. So again, just reiterating that, thank you once again for thinking of our Kerfuffle members. So again, beginning 1st November, no tie-in, no contract, no payment details even are required. Available to the first 10 agency offices in each county or London borough. And they can find out those details about it if we go to your landing page, Mutually Yours Limited, on the website.
Yeah, it's not our own web address is mutualoffmarket.com.
Mutualoffmarket.com. That's where they can find out further information. So yeah, please either go via Kerfuffle on there, or go directly to Max via his website and just mention you're obviously a Kerfuffle member there to tap into that deal. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Max, for taking the time out, explaining it to us. Wish you the very obviously best with that. It'll be fascinating to hear how the uptake of it goes. And I think what we'd love to do next time, get some feedback from how people are using the service. That'd be a real eye opener for us.
Yep, that'd be a pleasure.
Okay, Max. Thank you very again. Have a great week.
Okay, thanks, Simon.